start of it in old New York.
David joining us from Thailand, and it's 9 p.m. from the time I'm recording right now. What time is it though by you? You're 12 hours ahead?
Yeah, we're Wednesday morning at 9 a.m.
Okay, don't tell me what happens.
Yeah,
like
we're in the future.
So tell everybody who you are, what you do.
Sure. My name's David Roylance. I live in Chiang Mai, Thailand, and I've been living here since 2015, but I've really been part of the Thai community since 2001 in America. I grew up in America and was around Thai people for quite a while and ended up having businesses in America based on traditional Thai massage, Thai culture, and sharing the teachings of Gautama Buddha. But the real business was teaching Thai massage and sharing Thai massage. But we also offered teachings that kind of helped people in their life through the Buddhist teachings. And when I eventually moved to Thailand and started being around Thai people every day, in America, half of my staff was Thai, half was American, and I was living in America. But here in Thailand, you're immersed into the culture because I'm living here, and it's a Buddhist society, it's a Buddhist culture, so you really get a chance to experience what that's like. And now what I do is, since I've closed all my businesses, I now share the teachings of the Buddha with ordained practitioners who are monks or ordained as a ordained practitioner, and also a household practitioners, people who are learning the teachings of Gautama Buddha and implementing them in their life. And it's important to understand that the Buddhist teachings, they're not a religion. It's a way of life. Religion to me is rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, a centralized organization that's sharing teachings and having everybody follow those teachings. But the Buddhist teachings aren't that way. There is no rites, rituals, worship, or ceremonies. It's all about learning and practicing the teachings to train the mind. So that's what I do, is share teachings to help people learn how to train the mind to get to this enlightened mental state where the mind is peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy, where you no longer experience sadness or anger, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fears, boredom, loneliness, all this kind of discontent feelings. And someone can actually train their mind to get to that point, and life is wonderful.
So how do you go about practicing to get to that point?
What you do is you find a teacher who you feel can guide you on this path. And right now, that's what I have set up. I have lots of resources for students to be able to learn and practice. And you want to look for a teacher who isn't charging a price to teach you. That teachers that are usually legitimately offering these teachings are going to do so just based on a donation basis. So that's how I live my life, is even though in the past I made quite a bit of money in my businesses, I shut those down, and now I just work by donation. And I have a book, audiobook, videos, podcasts, online classes, in-person classes. I provide private guidance. And once you find a teacher, you get resources to learn the teachings. And then the beauty of the Buddhist teachings is they're not based on belief. They're teachings that you learn with a teacher, but then you implement them in your life, and you can see the truth for yourself that these teachings are actually working. So rather than just believing and believing and believing and believing and hoping that when you die, everything works out for you, these teachings are such that when you learn them and you train your mind, you can actually see the results for yourself because your mind goes from anger to frustration to irritation to annoyance to, the same thing can happen that happened a few weeks ago. And you're like, wow, that didn't cause any anger at all. Like, I don't feel any anger whatsoever. So you actually see the truth in the teachings yourself. So what the teacher is doing is they're sharing teachings with you to help you independently observe the truth for yourself. Then that becomes wisdom. And now with this newfound wisdom that you have, the mind starts functioning in the world differently. And you start noticing that these emotions and these feelings that once caused sadness or anger or frustration now start to extinguish and be eliminated in the mind, where the mind then becomes peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy permanently. You no longer experience any of those discontent feelings.
Even if somebody cuts you off in traffic, you won't feel those feelings with a good teacher.
Yep. Well, it's not about it. It is about the teacher, but it's also about the individual's own dedication to doing the work, right? You can't just read a book and, all that frustration and irritation is gone. You actually do things like meditation. You do things like, observing the teachings in real life, because what the Buddha taught is what we call the natural laws of existence. So these natural laws of existence are like all around you. So what the Buddhist teachings are doing is cluing you into what these natural laws are. But because they exist in the world, you can actually observe it for yourself. Like, let's take the first example. It's called the three universal truths. So if you take this first universal truth, which he says is, okay, there's no permanent or fixed state. It's called impermanence, right? That nothing is permanent. Right. Okay. Mm-hmm. So that's the first universal truth. Constant change, right? So now what you do in order to practice that and see whether the Buddha is actually speaking true wisdom or not is you try to disprove the Buddha. Because if you can find something that's permanent, then you've disproven the Buddha. So you ask yourself, is your hair permanent? No, it's constantly growing. There you go.
I'm halfway there.
It's growing. Your facial hair is growing. It changes colors. It changes texture, right? Are your teeth permanent? No. Is your body permanent? No. It's constantly changing. Are your clothes permanent? No. You've had different clothes at different times. You won't keep them all the time. Your relationships, right? Are your relationships permanent? No. You've had different people come in and out of your life.
The New York Knicks are permanently bad in basketball. So well, it's the closest thing I could think of.
Well, I'm sure that they've had different periods of their schedule changes and right. their scores change and their stats change. They're not. It's not permanent. Yeah, I know you're joking, but so this is how you learn: is you walk through these teachings with a teacher. But nowadays we use books and videos and podcasts to help teach people. And then you do is you don't just believe these teachings, you go out and actually practice them and see that they're true.
Do you get that feeling of, I don't know how to describe it, like during meditation, whether you're channeling your thoughts out or just trying to get to like a place of pure stillness or emptiness?
Sorry.
Go ahead. No, you good.
There's two primary meditations that the Buddha taught. And the first one, which is the foundational meditation, it's called breathing mindfulness meditation. There's hundreds and hundreds of meditations in the world, but you really only need to learn two. And the good thing about that is by really focusing on those two, you can really deepen your practice and get really good at it. And you can train your mind. So this breathing mindfulness meditation is the foundation and the one that people do the most. And then there's a meditation called loving kindness meditation. This breathing mindfulness meditation, the goal is to train the mind to let go. to train it not to hold on, because what causes the mind to be angry and sad and frustrated and all of these things is the mind holds on. It wants something so badly. It craves, it has this eagerness, this longing. So using your example, the car cuts you off in traffic, right? The mind thinks like, okay, this is my lane, this is my place to
Right.
drive, and
Always.
it should be mine, right? The mind craves this permanence. So once somebody cuts you off, we're not talking about whether they're right or wrong, because that's not what this tradition teaches. What we're describing is, why is the mind discontent? Why is the mind angry in that situation? Well, the reason why the mind is angry is because it had this fixed state where it wanted to keep this lane of traffic to itself permanently. And when somebody cuts you off, the mind becomes discontent, because the mind doesn't like impermanence. The mind doesn't like when things change. The mind likes to hold on to things. So because everything in the world is impermanent, but the mind craves permanence, then the mind constantly becomes discontent until you train it otherwise. So that's where the breathing mindfulness meditation comes in, is you train the mind that as thoughts come into the mind, you let them go. You let them go. You let them go. You just focus on the breath. And then you can get to a point where the mind is so well trained that when that guy cuts you off in traffic, or that girl cuts you off in traffic, you can just let it go and it doesn't bother you.
Is there a reason why, or is there a theory why the mind is wired that way? Is that just like evolution, where we're seeking like peace, or things that are, and when you see outside interference, it causes anxiety or whatever? Is that be a reason why?
When humans are born into the world, into this human world, we're born into it with this consciousness that has three primary problems. It's called craving, anger, and ignorance, or unknowing of true reality. These are like the three primary problems that the human mind has. And this is what the mind has in the unenlightened state. So when people talk about awakening the mind to enlightenment, what they're talking about is training the human consciousness from this unenlightened state where it has craving, anger, and ignorance, or unknowing of true reality, training the mind to this higher consciousness where it's now awake or enlightened, or it has this wisdom that understands the human mind so well. Because right now we have this unenlightened mind, but you're not aware of it. You're not aware that you're actually causing your own sadness. You're causing the boredom. You are causing the anger, not that guy cutting you off.
Right.
See, in the unenlightened state, we think that guy cutting us off is causing the anger. But in reality, you're causing it yourself, because the mind has this craving for permanence, has attachment, right? So once you come to understand that you are causing all the problems, you're causing the sadness, the anger, the frustration, the irritation, all these discontent feelings, when you come to realize and take responsibility for you causing these feelings, the beauty in that is because you're causing it, you can also eliminate it. Yeah, you can fix it. So instead of going around the world and trying to fix everybody else to do things your way, all you have to do is focus on training one mind. And when you train that one mind, then you can get to this peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy. So do you know who that one mind is that you need to train?
Your Buddha mind?
Your mind.
Oh,
Right? You got to train your mind.
I missed it.
Yeah, you got to train your mind. So that's beautiful, because what a lot of people do is they go around the world and try to train everyone else to do it your way.
Exactly.
But there's 7.5 billion people in the world. How can you train everyone to do it your way? So if you just learn how to train your mind to not be attached to what other people do, what other people say, then the mind can reside peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy, because it's no longer attached or depending on other people for your happiness or for your contentment.
Now, let me ask you, how do you practice? And I guess one of the ways you go about getting that more peaceful mind is by meditating and practicing meditation, and eventually having that trickle down to some other areas in your life. Like if you're driving, you get that road rage. Instead, you detach from that. You're able to be more peaceful by separating yourself from whatever rage would come from that. How would you recommend somebody start practicing slowing down, meditating to become that more serene feeling that you seem to talk about?
Yeah, so the breathing mindfulness meditation is really quite simple. There's 4 different positions that you can take. Normally, you start in the seated position. So you just sit in a chair, you sit on the floor, and you just relax your lower body. You engage your muscles in your upper body to kind of sit up straight. And then you just rest your hands in your arms in your lap. And then you just close your eyes and you breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. And as you're breathing in through the nose and out through the nose, with your eyes closed, you just focus on the breath, because the breath is the present moment. But what happens is, as you're focusing on the breath, the mind, the unenlightened mind, is going to want to wander into the past, or it's going to want to go into the future. The mind's like this wild animal, right? It just wants to run around like this wild animal. So what you're doing in meditation is you're training the mind to just focus on the breath. And over multiple sessions, training the mind to come into the present moment, you now have the ability to control your mind. Because as thoughts come into your mind, you train it, let it go. Thoughts come into the mind, you train it to let it go. And you just focus on the breath. So then when that guy cuts you off in traffic, you can just cut off that thought. If you feel any anger that maybe starts to arise, you can just cut it off, because now you have the ability to control your mind.
You're controlling the interference that comes into your mind.
Right. And when you do that enough in daily life, so when you practice meditation for long enough, and then you take the benefits of that into daily life, eventually you get to the point where anger doesn't even arise. Like you don't even feel anger arise. It just doesn't even happen. That's the enlightened mental state. That when you first start practicing, sure, you're getting angry, you're getting frustrated, what have you. But the more that you learn the teachings, apply them to include meditation, eventually you kind of get ahead of the curve, where that anger that you used to feel over multiple months, it starts to dissipate and starts to be eliminated down to frustration, irritation, annoyance. And then eventually you just don't feel anything at all. When someone cuts you off, you just, all right, well, I'm safe. He's jetting ahead of me. No reason to lay on my horn. I'm just going to keep driving and just be peaceful. Why make myself angry? It's not going to be beneficial. Yeah, it's not going to do anything. There's no benefit in it.
Would a good way to focus on the breath be like breath counting? Is a method I'm somewhat familiar with.
I don't recommend counting the breath, because that's just basically replacing the thoughts that you're having with counting the numbers. Okay. It's better to focus on the sound of the breath entering into the nose, or the sensation of the air coming over the skin into the nose. Okay. So when you close your eyes and you're going to hear it, right? So you can focus on that sound, or you can focus on the sensation of the air kind of coming over the skin. This breath, the reason why I focus on the breath is because that's the present moment. And the mind's going to want to go to the past. It's going to want to go to the future. It's going to want to have all these thoughts and ideas. But when you bring the mind to the breath, you now gain control over the mind. and you learn how to control the mind.
Key thing, any person that's seeking or trying to teach people to be peaceful is focus on the now. There's that book by Eckhart Tolle, or Tolle, Power Now. I read it like a while ago.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about it. Well, it's similar topics that you're talking about now. Let me ask you real quick. Are you familiar with ayahuasca or DMT at all?
I've heard of DMT and ayahuasca. I've never used those. I've used other things in the past when I was in my younger days, but those things weren't kind of widely available when I was younger.
Because I had an experience with ayahuasca,
Mm-hmm.
and it a lot of things you're talking about now is just being in the now. When I was experiencing ayahuasca, I just felt like my thoughts be like enter into my mind and then go away, enter into my mind and go away until like I had no other, like it was just pure streamlined one line of thought, whichever the current thought was or whatever. It felt like emptiness, but it was so peaceful.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any word weird here, Buddhism stance on stuff like that, psychedelic, ayahuasca, DMT?
Yeah, so these psychedelic substances can kind of expose the mind to some of what it could potentially experience as an enlightened mind, but it's not enlightened. It's still in this unenlightened state. But it can kind of give you like this little bit. Yeah, it can kind of give you this like little glimpse of what it might kind of
it felt like.
Feel
That's crazy the way you're describing it.
But the thing is that those substances are temporary. They're still impermanent, right? They're still impermanent. This mental state of enlightenment, once you attain it, it's permanent. The mind is permanently peaceful, permanently calm, permanently serene, permanently content, and permanently has joy. So if somebody uses these psychedelic substances, they're not going to produce an enlightened mind. What it can oftentimes do is it can actually produce craving or attachment, a desire. It can actually hinder you from reaching this enlightened mental state, because now the mind depends on the psychedelic substance for some kind of pleasurable or some kind of experience, rather than attaining that enlightened mental state naturally, because you can attain it naturally.
We're always looking for shortcuts.
Yeah, psychedelics aren't a shortcut. There's many people that think they are, but they're not. They're actually walking backwards, because you're relying on this substance to produce this temporary experience, but once that substance is out of the system, you're right back where you started from, in the unenlightened mind. So if you train the mind naturally through these teachings, which includes meditation, then you can maintain this enlightened mental state permanently once you attain it.
I have heard that it's possible to have some type of natural, it's almost psychedelic-like experience just by breathing, breath work, and breathe. Like it's something that we're not even conscious of, but I forgot where I heard this from originally, but by having that certain, and maybe it's just that feeling that you're talking about, it just feels so surreal because you're at such a peaceful state of mind. Do you consider yourself to be at that level?
An enlightened person is never going to share that they are enlightened.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Because that's okay. Because an enlightened person has eliminated pride and arrogance and ego. So if somebody says, yes, Tony, I'm enlightened, or if somebody professes that they're enlightened, you can be sure that they're not, because there's still pride, there's still arrogance, there's still ego, there's still this desire for other people to know that they are enlightened. So an enlightened person is less interested in telling you that they are enlightened and more interested in helping you to attain enlightenment. So and then once you understand what enlightenment is and how to attain it, the more that your mind becomes more and more enlightened through the teachings that someone's sharing with you, you won't have to ask, David, are you enlightened? Because the teachings that I share with you and the guidance will lead your mind to enlightenment. And then you will know for yourself, okay, well, if this guy shared teachings with me that helped me in my mind get to this place where you can experience it yourself, then you don't have to ask me, David, are you enlightened? Because you already know what enlightenment is, and you'll start to experience it more and more, and then you won't need to ask that question to people because you'll be able to determine it for yourself. So an enlightened person isn't going to say that they are enlightened because they've eliminated pride, arrogance, and ego. And they're more interested in helping other people to attain enlightenment rather than talk about their own attainment.
You said you mentioned earlier human life, entering human life. And Buddhism also talks about reincarnation. How exactly, not exactly, I don't know if you could answer it exactly, but becoming a human and having past lives or future lives, how is that process? How would that work?
Sure. So there's two different things that people talk about. There's reincarnation and then there's rebirth. Okay. Reincarnation is what a lot of people talk about, but it's actually not what the Buddha taught. He taught rebirth, and these are two different things. So what reincarnation is reincarnation is like if somebody has a soul and then that same soul is showing up into multiple different existences. So it's the same soul, but a different body. Okay.
Okay.
This is what some people talk about, but it's not what the Buddha taught. He taught what's called the cycle of rebirth, which is every time there's a new birth, it's a new body and a new mind. He never taught whether there is a soul or there isn't a soul, because the concept of a soul conflicts with impermanence. And there's no conflicts in the Buddhist teachings. If there's a permanent soul that moves from body to body or existence to existence, it conflicts with the universal truth of impermanence. So there was never any teachings from the Buddha about a soul and reincarnation. He instead taught about the cycle of rebirth. And he taught about these 5 different realms of how beings move from realm to realm, and they are born into new existence with a new body and a new mind. So essentially,
if it's this, so I could be like, I could be a being from a different realm.
Right. So like in your past, you've had many different existences that you just don't remember at this time. Because in the unenlightened mind, there's residual memories of these past lives, but people tend to not remember them until their mind starts to get closer and closer to enlightenment.
Have people experienced that?
Yes. And I can share that I've experienced that. I've seen past lives. And I saw I saw these past lives before understanding the Buddhist teachings about rebirth. So some people might say, well, if you study the Buddhist teachings about the cycle of rebirth, that conditions your mind to then have experiences where you see your past lives. But that's not what happened for me. What happened for me is I saw the past lives first, And then when I studied his teachings explained exactly what I experienced, right?
Were you working
So,
towards that, or is this part of the reason why because you said in 2015 you moved to Thailand,
mhm.
now live in a Buddhist community. Is that part of why you made that move?
So when I was growing up, my life was very hostile, very aggressive, a lot of anger in my family, a lot of abuse in my family, hostility. And I always kind of craved a more peaceful life, but I didn't know what that was. I didn't know how to acquire that. I just felt like human beings should be better to each other than what I was experiencing in my family and what I was experiencing in my community. I just felt like there's got to be something better. This is like not good. But growing up in America, you're taught that America is the best country in the world, and we're so wonderful, and everyone
Right.
else is so horrible. So
America.
my mind grew up thinking that okay, well, this is the best, is what America's got. But what I noticed is growing up in America, I started having all these Asian friends. It wasn't like a conscious decision that I made, but I started spending time with lots of people from the Philippines, from Vietnam, from Korea, from China, from all these different Indonesia, all these different countries. And then I met someone from Thailand. And when I came to Thailand the first time in 2002, I was blown away by how friendly and kind and warm and generous, how much the families worked together and helped each other, the amount of respect that each other had, not only in the family, but in the general public, people had an enormous amount of respect for each other. And there wasn't this anger and hostility in the community. People had utter control over their mind. And I was blown away by this. And I didn't understand it in 2002. But once I left and went back to America, I created this very Thai life in America where my wife was Thai, half of my employees were Thai. So from 2001 all the way through until now, I've been around Thai people exclusively. I've been around Westerners too, but I've really adopted the Thai way of life and the Buddhist way of life. And the more that I've done that, my mind has become peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. And I see this better way of living life through the Buddhist teachings that exist here in Thailand that doesn't exist in Western culture. So that's one of the things that I'm doing, is sharing the teachings of the Buddha that exist here in Thailand with people all throughout the world and all the various cultures around the world that they're in.
So, were you a Buddhist prior to 2002?
No, I didn't even know anything about the Buddha until I came to Thailand the first time, and I saw the first Buddha
Okay.
statue, and I saw the monks and saw temples and all of this stuff, right?
I presume you're Christian at some
I
point?
grew up with a lot of different Christianity and Catholicism, but my family never required me to do anything. They just let me do whatever I wanted to do. So I explored a lot of Christianity, a lot of different denominations of Christianity. And at one time, I was diagnosed with mental illness, right? I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. I had a lot of depression. I had panic attacks, anxieties, all these different things. And it wasn't until I started deeply practicing the Buddhist teachings that I eliminated all of that. I eliminated all the depression, all the mania and excited feelings, all the panic and fear and sadness and negative self-talk. All of the teachings from the Buddha train the mind to be stable and calm, which is not what we grow up with in America. So I was led to believe that I was mentally ill and that my brain was defective and I needed to take this medicine for the rest of my life. So for 24 years, I was doing that and things didn't improve. It wasn't until I started learning and practicing the teachings of the Buddha that all of that stuff got eliminated from the mind.
You know, and I have experience with anxiety and panic attacks too. So I started meditating, which I haven't meditated in a while. So when you popped up, I was like, I have to get this. This is right up my alley here.
Yeah. Yeah, because, you know, we're taught that in America and a lot of Western cultures, and not just Western cultures, but all throughout the world, we're taught that these feelings and emotions we have, that they're being caused by other people. Like, that guy cut me off in traffic. It's his fault that I'm angry, right? Like, we don't learn these good, wholesome teachings that have been in place in Thailand here for at least 1,000 years. Right? Our country isn't even 1,000 years old, where these teachings and this indigenous population of people have been here for at least 1,000 years. So they're deeply rooted and soaked into the minds of these people. And it's not an experiment. It's not a test. These teachings have been here for 1,000 years. And you can see when you go out in the public, it's very peaceful. It's very calm. People are smiling at each other. Everyone's friendly, everybody's kind and respectful. You can see, like, wow, this is such a great way to live life. And you see it amongst the people, amongst strangers, just, you know, caring for each other and being loving towards each other. And that's because of the teachings of the Buddha that have been here for so long.
Is that all throughout Thailand like that?
95% of the country is Buddhist.
95%?
95%.
There's always going to be some percentage. There's always that are.
The thing about the Buddhist teachings is they're very open, right? So, like, right. There's Christians that live here. There's plenty of churches here. There's mosque and Muslim people. There's other traditions as well, but the vast majority of the people consider themselves Buddhist. And there's 45,000 temples in Thailand, and Thailand's about the size of Texas landmass. And there's 45,000 temples. There's about 33,000 that are in operation, that are being used. So that's an enormous amount of temples. And the way that these temples get created is by the people. The people have, you know, they support them by going there and doing the work and making the donations and, you know, not feeling like they're obligated to do so. They do it based on their own personal choice, that they would like to go to the temple. And when they go there, they benefit because they get to spend time learning the teachings. And then they take those teachings and they go home and they use the teachings to lead their life and benefit their home life. So they see that the teachings are benefiting them in their home life. So that's why they keep supporting the temples. There's no obligation or requirement to support the temples, but the Thai people choose to do it because they see the benefit in having these temples in their community.
Have you been keeping up with the state of American society at all, as far as racial division and political division?
I see a lot of that stuff from here in Thailand because it's all over YouTube and all over Facebook. So I do see those things, and those are actually motivators for me to teach, because those things go away when people learn these teachings, right? Like, the teachings of the Buddha are all about love and kindness and compassion and being polite and kind, friendly, respectful, treating all people equally, right? All these, you know, having control of your feelings and emotions, all these good, wholesome teachings would eradicate social injustices, would eradicate racism, would eradicate discrimination, would eradicate harm to people, you know, harm to others, would eradicate this hoarding of resources and not helping your fellow human beings, right? The teachings would teach generosity and helping others and sharing. So I do keep up with it, and it's a big motivator for me to teach and share these teachings so that people can get help.
Have you had, or have you seen any change in Westerners in particular, Americans, reach out to you? And I think you'd be somebody that people over here can relate to, at least. You lived here for a long time from here. Has this time caused an uptick in people saying, like, people have I've spoken to people that have said, dude, my anxiety is going through the roof right now. This is it's just crazy, I'm worried about going here. And people are judging you for this, for that, it's a weird time in the States.
Yeah, a lot of my students are from America, because I teach, like I mentioned, I have a book, audio book, videos, podcasts.
How can we find these things, these resources?
The best way is go to buddhadailywisdom.com. Okay. If you go to buddhadailywisdom.com, from there you can launch into the Facebook group, into the YouTube channel, the podcast, all of these things. But I know, and also I have personal relationships with my students. They contact me and I spend private time with them, teaching them. So I know that a large majority of the people that study with me are from America, and they all will speak occasionally on their own about how much benefit they're getting from these teachings, that they can see their mind improving, right? So they go to I teach online classes twice a week, on Wednesday and Sunday, and they take these online classes. They're also reading the book that I give away for free. By the way, everything I offer is offered openly free.
Free classes Wednesdays and Sundays?
Wednesday and Sunday, and the book's free, the audio book's free, all the resources I provide are free. I have people that offer donations. There's however many people, $10 here, $20 there, $50 here. People will give me donations to take care of me. And I'm living in Thailand, so it doesn't cost much money to help me get a little bit of food or whatever. But all of these resources I provide, they're all available at no cost. So people are learning with the resources that I provide on their own, and then they're coming to class or they're reaching out to me privately to get private guidance. And after just a few weeks or a couple of months, they can already start to see the differences. And there's people that have been on depression medication for 5 or 10 years. They're starting to get off their medications. There's people that are having conflicts with their children or their husband or their wife. Those things are starting to be eliminated slowly. And they're starting to see their personal and professional relationships improve. So they're making progress, and they can see the benefit for themselves because these teachings aren't based on belief. You can see the benefit yourself. You can see the results.
It's not like being told to have blind faith in something.
Right. In fact, the way that these teachings are based is you should ask your teacher, like, can you help me understand this? Can you show me this? And then you, after you learn with your teacher, you go off and you do the meditations. You practice the teachings in daily life. You notice that your mind is improving, and you're noticing that you're conducting your daily affairs in a much better way.
Do you do any guided meditations?
I do. So the way I structure my program is every week we study a different chapter in this book. There's, 24 chapters and some extra material in this book. So every week we have a different chapter. On Sunday, I do the talk about this chapter. So this week we're on chapter 3. So last week.
What time are your classes?
They're 9 o'clock Thai time, so it'd be 9 a.m. 9 a.m. your time. So on Sunday, I talk about the chapter in the book, and then on Wednesday, I teach meditation. So
they're 9 p.m. your time?
Right, it's 9 p.m. my time, so it would be 9 a.m. your time.
Okay.
So that's when you wake up tomorrow, I'll be teaching meditation. And actually, so these Wednesdays, what I do is I rotate, right? So the first Wednesday I do breathing mindfulness meditation. Then the second one is loving kindness meditation. Then the third one I teach Buddhist chanting to learn how to chant in the Buddhist tradition. And then I start over. I do breathing mindfulness meditation, loving kindness meditation. So every 3 Wednesdays, I'm rotating, these different topics. But then on Sunday, it's a chapter from this book. So people will either read the chapter before or after class, and they'll come to class and they'll get a chance to hear me talk about the chapter, going even beyond what we studied what I wrote in the book. But then students also get a chance to ask questions. And there'll be anywhere from 20 to 40, 50 people on those classes. And we have a moderator who moderates the class, and then they all get recorded for YouTube, for Facebook, for the podcast. So there's thousands of people that are learning with these resources right now.
Do you do them over Zoom?
Yes, there's a Zoom. People can join by Zoom, which is really nice because then you can raise your hand electronically, ask the question if you want, or you can type it in for the comments and our moderator will ask the question for you. And then I also live stream to Facebook and YouTube. So there's people in Facebook and there's people in YouTube that are watching the live stream, and they're typing in their comments as questions. And then our moderator is going to ask the questions during the talk and make sure that people get the guidance that they need based on what I'm talking. So I'll talk for like 15, 20 minutes or so, and then I'll stop and see what questions we have, answer whatever questions we've got, and then I'll talk some more, answer questions. And people are learning from all over the world.
Beautiful thing. Buddha Daily Wisdom is the Facebook.
The Facebook is, if you type in search Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha in Facebook search, you'll get it. Or if you type in facebook.com/groups/Daily Wisdom 999, you can get it there as well. Or you can just go to buddhadailywisdom.com, and then from there, under online resources, it has the Facebook, the YouTube, the podcast, the free book, and all the other resources that are there.
Are you on Instagram?
I have an Instagram account, but I don't really do much with it. About once or twice a week, I'll post my classes in there, but I don't really do too much with Instagram.
No TikTok, right?
My son does TikTok.
So real quick, because we're coming up on an hour. I don't know it's early by you. It's late by me. Just kind of wrap things up right here. People listening for the now, how would you tell people to chill out, meditate, maybe take a quick breath?
What's important for people
practice, take a quick breath. At the end to conclude the Tony Talks.
Yeah, what people need to understand is all the emotions that they're having in the mind, all the sadness, anger, frustration, irritation, guilt, shame, boredom, loneliness, shyness, jealousy, resentment, you are causing all of those feelings. All of those feelings are coming from you. Right now, you might think that other people are causing those problems and causing your mind to be angry, but you're causing all those problems. All those feelings are being generated in your mind. And if you take responsibility for those feelings, that means you can actively eliminate them because you're the one causing them. And that's a beautiful thing because now, yes, you can do meditation and you can train the mind to eliminate all these discontent feelings. So sure, can you pause for a second, close your eyes and take a breath? Sure. But that's just a temporary little thing, right? What is really important for you and your listeners is to really dive in and study in depth so that over a period of time, your mind becomes gradually more peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy, where you eliminate all these discontent feelings.
It's a way of life. It's not a quick.
It's a way of life. It's not a quick
Western
fix.
society, we need a magic pill just to settle everything immediately. But there's no
Right. That doesn't exist, right? But that's what modern society wants. They want a quick fix. And that's why there's all these medications everywhere. But the medications don't really fix it, right? It just makes you dependent on this expensive medications, these doctors, these treatments that are never a permanent fix. But the beauty is that you have everything you need right now to fix this problem.
Where is it?
You have your mind,
Oh.
you have your body, you have your breath, you have the teachings, you have a teacher, right? So you have what you need. All you need is dedication and commitment to actually step forward and do it. And then once you do, then you eliminate all of this medication, this expensive medication, going to see the doctor, doing all of these different things. And now you have control over the mind. And it's what we call an unshakable mind. There's nothing that can happen in daily life that's going to shake up your mind, because you've now trained it to be stable, calm, and peaceful.
Another type of medication would be picking up your phone and going on Instagram or Facebook.
That doesn't work though. It's temporary, right? People get angry at Facebook and they think it's Facebook's problem, that Facebook's bad.
It's all internal. It's all internal.
It's all internal. So once you accept responsibility that you're causing all of these feelings and emotions in the mind, that's really powerful, because now what you're admitting to yourself is because you're causing it, you can eliminate them.
This has been really awesome. I think this is very relevant. You know, we're constantly inundated with messages saying that we should be terrified of people who don't look like us, people who have different political beliefs than us. But really, we have to stop looking at those that have different beliefs and just removing our mind from that equation and just focus on becoming the best version of ourselves we can be, to become more enlightened. And this isn't anything that's, you know, like hippie dippy, whatever that it might try to be framed as in some sections of the media. It's just reality. It's just human. It's more real than anything, really. It's your mind, which makes up your whole existence, your whole human experience.
Right. You experience everything in this world.
Say shut up. You don't.
That was some wise words, because you experience everything in the world through the mind. So if your mind is polluted with this fear and this anxiety and the stress and anger and sadness and all these other discontent feelings, if your mind's polluted with that, then when you go out into the world looks like a pretty dark place. But if you train the mind to eliminate all of those things, all that sadness and anger and hostility and frustration, when you train the mind to eliminate all of that, now when you walk into the world, you can experience this peaceful, calm, serene, content mind. Sure, other people are going to be doing whatever they do, but your mind will be peaceful. Your mind will be calm. Your mind will be serene and content with joy. It'll be stable and steady. So your mind isn't shaking up. Your mind isn't shaken up by what other people do. But right now, your mind is shaken up by what other people do, because you haven't trained your mind, so therefore you don't have control of it.
Right.
Other people are controlling your mind.
We're undereducated in. It's how to use our mind.
Yes. The mind is a powerful thing. And what the Buddhist teachings are is, remember, they're not a religion. They're essentially mental training, that you learn how to train your own mind. And through you learning how to train your own mind, then you can control it. And nobody else has the power to control your mind. You are controlling it. People aren't, now when you go out into the world, or you turn on the news, or you look at Facebook, your mind gets shaken up because you don't have the ability to control your mind. The reason why you don't have the ability to control your mind is because you haven't trained your mind. So what the Buddhist teachings are doing is helping you learn how to train your mind. And once you train it, then you can control it. You control your mind, not other people.
Beautifully put. I think that's a good note for us to close out on. Is there anything else that you want to put out or share before
No, it's been a nice little talk, and appreciate you inviting me onto your show.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure. So real quick, I was going to end the podcast, but you mentioned to me a great incentive for people to really optimize their mind. You just talk about that real quick.
Yeah. So, knowing that through attaining enlightenment and walking on this path to train your mind, you can eliminate the discontent feelings of sadness, anger, frustration, irritation, all those discontent feelings that I mentioned. That's kind of enough to kind of incentivize someone to say, hey, yeah, this path sounds pretty interesting. I'd like to get rid of sadness. I'd like to get rid of anger. I'd like to get rid of boredom and loneliness and guilt and shame. But aside from those things, which is kind of enough of incentive, what happens with an enlightened mind is you also gain significant focus. You get deep concentration, you get deep memory, and you get clarity of thoughts. So these qualities of mind, these advantages of focus, concentration, memory, and clarity of thought, they become very beneficial in your personal and professional relationships, because instead of talking with your boyfriend or girlfriend or your boss or your coworkers, and your mind's just kind of drifting off into the past or thinking about the future and that kind of right. You can really focus on the task at hand, whatever it is, and you can apply focus, concentration, memory, and clarity of thought, and your mind functions more optimally. Your mind is very optimized through this training that now it performs really well. So the Buddha described this during his lifetime. They had what's called a sitar. It's like a stringed instrument, kind of like a guitar. And what he noticed is if the string was too loose and you pluck the string, it sounded not good. And if the string was too tight and you pluck the string, it didn't sound right. It's only when you tune the string perfectly in the middle that when you pluck it, it plays beautiful music. And the mind is the same way, that when the mind is so sad and dwelling in the past, it doesn't perform optimally. Or if the mind is angered or frustrated or bored or lonely or thinking about the future, it doesn't perform well. It's only when the mind's in the middle, in the present moment, that it can have focus, concentration, memory, and clarity of thought.
Something else just came to my head. This is way different than what you were just mentioning. The Dalai Lama. Is he what? He's somebody that goes through the rebirth process as a human continuously, and is he like a messenger of the Buddha, or?
So there's 3 different traditions of Buddhist teachings. Okay. There's the Theravada tradition, there's the Mahayana tradition, and there's the Vajrayana tradition. The form of Buddhist teachings that are closest to what existed during the lifetime of the Buddha is the Theravada teachings. That's called the teachings of the elders. That's the tradition that I teach, which existed during the lifetime of the Buddha. After he died, his teachings were changed and modified, and that's where you get Mahayana Buddhism, which is from like China. And then you get later, much later, they changed the teachings more and they made Vajrayana teachings, which is like from Tibet. In reality, these teachings have been spread all throughout the world, but the Dalai Lama is from the Vajrayana tradition, which is a form of Buddhist teachings that are very different than Theravada teachings and that were changed a lot from the lifetime of the Buddha. A lot of people that are from like a Christian Catholic background, they think that the Dalai Lama is like the Pope of Buddhism, but he's not. There is no Pope of Buddhism because there's no centralized organization that collects all these teachings. It's individual temples and individual teachers just all sharing the teachings.
That's an important discrepancy.
Yeah. So the Dalai Lama is just another monk, another Buddhist monk that happens to be very popular and well known and pretty famous because he's in the news. He's got a really big following.
Like a political figure almost.
Right, a lot of publicity, that kind of thing. But so in the Theravada teachings, we aren't interested in being reborn. The Buddhist teachings aren't about being reborn. It's about ending the cycle of rebirth, because existing in this human form is somewhat miserable, right? Like you have this anxiety, you have this sadness, you have this depression, you have this boredom and loneliness, this discontent mind. And if you were to be, the suffering, right? To be reborn is kind of like undesirable.
To be so then why are we here? What would you say if somebody asks, why are we here then?
The reason why we're here is because we haven't yet attained enlightenment. Once you attain enlightenment, you're no longer being reborn.
Then
what your question is what's the purpose of life, right?
What's the purpose of everything?
There is no purpose. There is no purpose, right? We just exist. We fill our time with all these hobbies and activities and jobs and income. But if you go back to like the prehistoric human beings,
the survival.
Yeah, like that's all they were doing. They were just trying to peacefully coexist together and survive.
We could think and everything.
Yeah, but that's our ego, right? Thinking that we're special.
I know. Yeah.
You know, we've become so modernized that we don't live in caves anymore. We don't have all these big creatures roaming the earth anymore. At one time, prehistoric humans, we were kind of low on the totem pole, right? There was all these other creatures that could eat us up in a heartbeat. But now we've pretty much killed all of them over millions of years. We've killed all of these big creatures. And now humans are like this dominant being on the planet. And now we're looking around saying, well, what's the real purpose of this life? Because we're so called the dominant being, but yet we just roam around the earth kind of doing miscellaneous stuff. When in reality, what we really should be doing is working on attaining enlightenment so that we don't keep coming back and being reborn over and over again.
And then you reach enlightenment, you break the cycle. And then
so if you attain enlightenment during this life, you get to experience the rest of this life with a peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy. You know that you've attained enlightenment because your mind's so peaceful, right, and everything around you is happening so peacefully. So you get to enjoy the rest of this existence with that peaceful mind, and you'll know that you're never coming back again because you've attained this mental state of enlightenment. Your life is already so peaceful, and you know, like, okay, I'm not coming back. The suffering's over. The discontentedness is over. You can experience that right here, right now in this life. So you get to the point where you don't even fear death because you understand death and you don't even fear it.
And death would be the permanent impermanence.
So once you've attained enlightenment and then you die, We don't know what's next.
That's the $1 million question.
Right. But the beauty is that if you've attained enlightenment, your mind's already so peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. You don't care what's next because it's either what I'm experiencing right now or it's something better than this. Because your mind is already so peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. Like, you have no worries. You have no stress, no anxiety. You're never angry. You're never sad. You're never frustrated. You're never bored. You're never lonely. You're never jealous. You never have resentment. All of that stuff is completely gone from the mind. So why do I care what's next? All I'm doing is maintaining the present moment and living in this present moment, not even thinking about the future.
We need to take your words from this podcast and put it into a pill form. And then and slip it into the drinks of all the politicians and a lot of people in general.
Well, the more and more people in the world that learn and practice these teachings, the world just becomes a more loving, more kind, more peaceful place to exist. But it has to happen with each individual, like you choosing, okay, now I'm going to learn and practice these teachings and make this part of my life. And by you doing that, you're improving your life. And then someday if you have, someday you could expand it from there. And if you have kids or you have a boyfriend or girlfriend or whoever in your life, those people start to learn with you as well. And it just spreads throughout the world naturally. Buddhist practitioners aren't in the world hitting a drum and trying to force everybody to believe what they believe, because these teachings aren't about belief. There's no belief. So we learn and practice these teachings, and then as people are interested, then they say, hey, I would like to learn about that. Like you said, hey, David, I would like to invite you onto my show. I want to learn about what you're doing. So I'm like, okay, I'll share it with you. I'll share with you what I've got going on. But we're not out there trying to force this into the world. The world needs to pull these teachings into their life.
Very interesting.
What the Westerners are used to with religion is people push religion into people's lives. But this isn't a religion. This is people need to choose to learn it and practice it and pull it into their life. So that's why, even though this has been around for over 2,500 years, there's about 500 million people in the world that are practicing this. Very small compared to some other traditions. But that's because we're not out on the street pushing it into people's lives. But when people become aware of it, like now with internet, with physical travel around the world exploding with airplanes and mass transportation like we've got now the teachings can really spread in the world in ways that they couldn't even just 100 years ago.
Perfect. Pre-COVID travel.
Yeah, pre-COVID. So Thailand's going to be opening up here soon, and a lot of tourists come to this city that I'm in, Chiang Mai, Thailand, and I meet people from France and Italy and Spain and Germany and you name it, all over the world. People come here and learn, and they're interested to understand the Buddhist teachings, and then once they learn, they take them back home and they can maintain contact through online and keep learning.
Yeah, it's a way for them to take it and then continue to grow with it by staying in touch. That's kind of, it's a good way for people to expand it, I guess.
Yeah, there's ongoing support. Even though they're not here in Thailand, they can have ongoing support.
Right. All right. So I think I'm glad we circled back on those last couple of points. It was more than I originally planned for. Is there anything else that you think people should know about right now that we didn't touch? Well, I'm sure there's a million things you could probably say, but
people just need to decide that they're ready to get rid of sadness and anger and frustration. Like, they can make the choice to eliminate that stuff,
You can go to buddhadailywisdom.com to learn more about you and everything that we've been talking about.
Exactly. Yeah, everything's openly offered, freely offered. There's no
Right.
monetary incentive here. It's just another human being looking to help other human beings. And you can see the truth for yourself. As you learn and practice, you'll see the mind improving.
The human being helping another human being. Let's all take that message, let's all help each other just become better. Thank you, David.
You're welcome.